Hey gals, guys, and everyone else, I'm Hayze, this is Almond Brownies, and this is in fact my stream. And it is finally Cosplayuary, which is my vaguely dumb term for my winter off from university over the Christmas period, where I get to work on a cosplay and I stream a whole lot more. So we have people in chat, we're here, and I have laid out all of my preemptive work, shall we say, for my Mercy cosplay. This is a bunch of 3D printing I did before we started. Even though the vote did come very, very close. There was one vote between Vi and Mercy. Even if Vi had won, I would still want to be working Mercy eventually. However, Mercy has more 3D printing in her because she has more props than Vi. So getting a head start kind of made sense if Mercy was picked, which she was. Because Mercy has not only her staff, she's got the wings, which is a big part that we'll be going through in the next couple of weeks because I'm going to have to custom design and custom make them. Her pistol, which I have done a version of in the past, however, I really don't like this pistol. I tried a lot of really random things to try and get it smooth. I experimented with a lot of different chemicals, a lot of different materials. There is specialist 3D printing smoothers on here. There's polyester resin, there's polyester body filler, there's all sorts, and it hasn't really come out well. However, since I've done this, I've learnt a really nice technique for smoothing down 3D prints for cosplay projects, and I will share that to you as we go on. And that I hope you're excited for. So this will get reprinted. In the meantime, if somebody wants a crappy Mercy pistol, perhaps this could end up in one of your hands. Who knows? Also, it's huge. This is a proper sort of. this is a proper. Reaper's got me. Fuck. And Reaper's there. Why would you? No. First off, I need to thank Jill Cope for giving me permission to use her 3D model and alter it so I can fill it full of my electronics. And not only alter it, but show you the alterations I'm doing on it and such. And hopefully you'll get a chance to thank them on their My Manufactory page. There will be a link in the description of every video where I use her 3D model. Most central important part for Mercy staff is this inch diameter pipe. It's over an inch diameter, so I'm not really sure like what they actually measure them in, but who knows, I think it might be an inch radius. I don't know. I don't work in Imperial, because Imperial is weird. Imperial is really weird. Anyway, so we're going to put this to one side because this is the center stock for the staff, because the eventual staff is going to have 3 sections to it, which I'm really proud of, and I'll show you how we're sectioning it off in a bit, because I want to bring you through the main meat of the staff first. Go over to the detail camera. So, what do we have? What do we have? Shall we start from the top? We have this part. We have basically the nozzle that goes on the front of this staff. I have hollowed it out because the actual version of the model is solid, and I've hollowed it out so I can put a diffusing medium inside there and then put through the bottom a NeoPixel, which is an RGB LED which will be controlled by the Arduino that runs this entire staff. Behind that, there are 2 parts that I haven't printed yet. They are the parts that these flanges or wings go on. I keep on referring to them as flaps or flanges or wings. I don't know what the actual technical term for them, but there are 3 of them, and I've got them in 3 states of disrepair. We have this one, which hasn't been glued together or solvent welded together, which, as you can see, if you have a look where it joins, we haven't yet started to join these. However, after we join them, we hit them with solvent welding, and then we fill in the gap where there is a little bit of a gap, a little bit of an indent. We fill it in with this fine filler paste, which is this stuff. You can just buy it off the shelf at a hardware store. This is actually my recent magic bullet. It is so good for 3D prints. Screw any of that 2-part resin that you paint over it that was going on about recently. This stuff is the best. And then you sand that down. And once you've sanded that down, basically hide the entire join. It is magical. It is amazing. I absolutely love it. So those are the 3 stages of finishing a print. And then eventually you get down to this sort of level where you have what looks like a mass production plastic model. Behind those, we come out with the arms. So there are 3 arms that come out of the back of it. You can see these were actually really hard to print, amazingly hard to print. I've left this one still on the support material, just so you can see, because I tried to print them on the bed like that a few times, and it just didn't work. It straight up didn't work. I had to print them out like this. on the print bed. So we've got a big raft, and it's kind of levelled off the bed a fair bit. So there's so much support material. It leaves a fair bit of an impression on the bottom of the print. There'll be lots of cutting PLA off the bottom of other PLA, and then sanding. So much sanding. Okay, so behind that we have these tuber sections. These two parts printed perfectly. Oh my god, did they print nicely. So this bit needs all this random support MacGuffin that was added to it. I'll be knifing those off tonight and over this week. And then they need to be hit with dichloromethane to smooth them off and then sanded a fair bit. And then behind that, we have the actual handle section. Now, these parts didn't print out too well because I had to break them off into sections. I had to break them off into sections so I could hollow them out for our electronics. I'll go into our electronics in a future video. But for now, let's just say that is our battery compartment, and right there is where the USB charger goes, because Mercy Star will be chargeable by a mobile phone charger. And the plan is to actually have a large battery pack inside where we can string a USB stick out of the back to charge the staff up. But that is way in the future. So this goes like that. The join between these two isn't very nice. However, lots of sanding, lots of filling. It should clean it up nicely. That goes like that, and we have a nice size handle. I have altered this so we have a couple of places for buttons to go, because this staff will have a fair few electronics in it, and it needs to have lots of buttons to control the inside. And there is also a little space there, which hopefully will be a nice surprise. This bit joins onto our staff section. Why isn't the staff section the entire length? It's because we have this bit. The staff section is going to be cut into 3 pieces, and between each piece we're going to have these bayonets. So it's just going to slot into each other like this. There's a little bit of give to it, but the most important thing is there is room for a pretty decent sized magnet in there. The 2 ends, the handle, tail end, will definitely go boop like that, and they will lock together with magnets, so the entire thing will break down. And then we have only thing that I could actually call a finished piece. It's not finished yet, it still needs a little bit of work, but no, I'll leave this in here, because this bit will get painted black and glued in there with a socket. This is 2 separate 3D prints that I have solvent welded together with dichloromethane. I have fine fillered along the join. I have sanded it down with progressive sanding, and then I have hit it with plastic primer. Oh, look at that. I've hit it with plastic primer, and then I've sprayed it with a spray gun using cellulose-based paint, which is an industry standard paint that you cannot use without a respirator and a high-quality spray room, which I get thanks to university. And that is the quality I want every part of this costume to match. So, shall we see how we get to that? Now, we start by clamping the 2 parts of our 3D model together with these model clamps, and then we're using dichloromethane to solvent weld these 2 together. If you are going to use this chemical yourself, I advise doing it in a very well ventilated room and having a specialist solvent pot to dispense it, as it's not a nice chemical to use. But when you solvent weld 2 pieces of PLA together, they are as strong as if they were just 1 piece, as you can see here. And you also want to make sure you're just brushing a little bit of the solvent along the edges and let it move across the join through capillary action, and also avoid getting it near the clamps, because the clamps have rubber pads on them that will melt into the print. So you wait for the join to dry out, take the clamps off, and then carry on solvent welding the 2 parts together. And we call it solvent welding because the 2 parts are melted into one another so that they become effectively 1 part. And once we're happy that they're sufficiently glued together, we then go over the entire surface of this PLA print with Diclo. This both gives the benefits of sealing the surface so it's not as stringy when we come to sand it, and also giving us our first pass of smoothing. It also adds a tiny bit of strength. Now, for the parts that we can't sand out, we use the surface filler paste that I showed you earlier, and we're going to apply it with a straight-edged object so we can be sure we're not applying too much at once. And now, once we're satisfied that's on nicely and also dried, we make up some sanding blocks. Now, the reason we're using sanding blocks rather than just using sandpaper with our fingers is that if you use your fingers,
your fingers exert an uneven amount of pressure upon the area that you're sanding. So if there's a little dip, sanding with your fingers will sand into the little dip. Whereas if you're using a solid block which has a flat surface, you will sand around that dip and therefore lower the entire surface to the height of that dip. And now we just hit this entire print with 180 grit sandpaper to bring the filler paste down to the same level as the rest of the print. Because of how the surface filler works, we have to do this a couple of times because there will always be little flaws left in it. In fact, you can see from a distance it looks pretty good, but when you look at it closely, you can still see parts of the join. So I go over it and try and spot the little bits where I've got it wrong, and then we fill those in with the filler paste again and rinse and repeat until we are happy we have a piece that we can carry on sanding to the surface finish that we actually want. And now we sand past the 180 grit, whereby we hit it with 180 grit and then we hit it with 240 grit, 320 grit and then 400 grit, because each iteration of that sandpaper is enough to remove the scratches that the other grit sandpaper left, because 180 has quite large grit in it, and then the 240 has slightly smaller grit, so we'll get out the scratches that you've just put in it, and so on and so forth. And once you've gone over it with the 400 grit sandpaper, you end up getting a surface that you're happy to spray, because the spraying will actually fill in the scratches from the 400 grit sandpaper. And then we just hit the thing with our plastic primer, because that will get brought to the spray booth at my university so I can paint it with some professional grade spray paint. And for this, I'm going to be using cellulose-based spray, which will give it a really nice professional finish, just like you saw with this tailstock. And once we actually have it sprayed, we'll go over the whole thing with some acrylics to weather the whole thing down, and it should look amazing. And this is a process we're going to have to repeat for every single prop in the costume. But remember to subscribe to see the rest of this costume and just support somebody else trying to share their cosplay. Also, if you want sneak peeks to some of these pieces, make sure to check out my Facebook page, where I share work in progress photos a lot. But anyway,
so that is an introduction to the processes we're going to be putting Mercy's props through. And that was all done on stream, live, with lots of people in chat. It was awesome night. I'm thankful for everybody who was there with us. Thank you for seeing the first steps into our Mercy cosplay. I cannot wait to get into this. There's so much more to do. I don't know how I'm going to tackle a lot of the issues yet, but we're going to be going through it together on YouTube, and hopefully we'll come out with an amazing cosplay, because there's a lot of bits that I haven't even approached yet. I don't, like, for example, I don't know how I'm going to do the apron yet, or the undersuit, because I think what we want to do is like have the apron be separate and then an undersuit where the arms come out, and then I need to do a whole harness section to mount the wings onto, and that's going to be a whole palaver in itself, because I want to 3D print those, but they need to be strong enough to hold the things. I've got magnets, I've got like magnetic connectors for electronics, so you just put the wings on with magnets, and then everything will have magnets, so we put magnets on magnets and electronics, we're going to have wireless devices and things, so we can actually communicate from the staff to the wings, so we can control it. And it's only the start of week 1 of Cosplayuary. So thank you all for being here. I hope you're all as excited as I am, because genuinely, I'm way more excited than I think it should be. So thank you for joining me, and goodbye.